Interested in how you can retire early starting in 2020 using real estate as your source of income? Well, today's video is something for you then. Let's get into it. Hey, what's up you guys? Lucas here from excelwealth.com. Now, great that you joined in today's video, of course, because in today's video, I'm going to show you how you can retire early and of course using real estate as an income source. Now, before we actually go into the video, of course, there are two terms that I want to define for you before we actually go into the video, because hey, otherwise it's just, thinking like, okay, right, are we talking about the same thing? Now, the first, of course, is retirement. Retirement doesn't mean that we are like, the moment I've achieved retirement, it's not I'm gonna sit at home and look at the plants growing and think, wow, that's a great thing. Now, retirement in this case is, of course, doing the things that you want to do them in your time and, of course, in your pace. Now, the interesting part is this, of course, we all want to make money. But the thing is of retirement is you don't need to make money anymore because you've got enough to pay for all the expenses that you have. That is retirement in this case. And of course, the second term that we're going to talk about and that we need to define is, of course, passive income. Now, passive income, very interesting. It's not that we do one magic trick and all of a sudden money keeps on flowing in. It doesn't work like that. Passive income, very shortly explained, is of course you do the work up front and reap the benefits from the activity that you put in later on. If you want to know more about active and passive income, click on the pop-up button that comes over there. Okay, let's get into the video. So before we actually start retiring, the first step that you need to think of is step zero. Now you might be thinking step zero. Yeah, I'll get to that in a bit, why this is called step zero. Now the first step in this, of course, so what you need to do before we actually can start this whole process is you need to be able to track your expenses. Now, it's very simple. If I would ask you, how much do you make in a month time? It's very easy. What you do is you take a look at your check. You can tell me specifically how much you make. You can tell me, oh, that's about 5,000, this and this and this. Because that's what your salary tells you. But the moment I ask you the question, how much do you spend each month? Well, that's going to be a different story. And that's the interesting part. All of a sudden, when we have expenses, people don't really always know how much they spend. And this is the case. So the first assignment that you need to do is track your expenses. I would always say track about 3 months of expenses. Why 3 months, you think? Well, the 1 month has other expenses compared to the other month. Now, if you have, for example, a date night every week, or you have a date night once a month, or you only have date night once every quarter of a year, this is why we take 3 months of time. So if you have an average on 3 months, you'll be able to say, okay, this is the amount of expenses that I have in a month's time. So if your income is like $3,000, okay, interesting, good for you. Well, how do you spend your $3,000? And that is the next question. How do you spend your $3,000? Now, there are two categories that you can put your expenses in. The first one is the necessities. Necessities are things like, you got to pay the mortgage of your home, you got to pay for the insurances, you got to pay for groceries, you got to pay for internet, because internet is also a necessity. And of course, on the other hand, we've got the discretionaries, the amount of money that you don't really have to pay for. For example, like a holiday. Now, everybody needs a holiday, but it doesn't mean that you have to go to an exotic place that costs a fortune to go to. You can, of course, go on a holiday somewhere nearby that doesn't have to cost a fortune, but you can still relax and chill. And of course, things like going out for dinner, for example, or the unnecessary shopping, or certain hobbies that you don't really need to do because, well, at least if you want to go running, doesn't mean that you have to buy the most expensive running shoes first. The moment you have these two categories, what you need to do is track the expenses, take a look. What is the number of your necessities? If you know what the number is of the necessities, that is your first goal. The moment you have the number of the necessities, if you have the number, for example, like, oh, my expenses are like 3K, that's the number that you need to be able to retire early. And the discretionaries, of course, that's all the luxury that you want to have in your life. So the moment you have this number, you know what the amount is that you need to make. And that's the whole idea. And this is why this is step zero. Because step one is the process of retiring early. Okay, let's go into it. Step number one in this whole journey of retiring early is, of course, saving up the amount of money to be able to pay for a down payment for a property, for a real estate property. Now, the interesting part is this, of course. Now, in most countries, if you want to buy real estate, the down payment on average is about 30%. Now, don't know what country you're from, but leave in the comments down below in what country you're from if you have watched the video up till here. Now, a down payment in most countries is around 30%. So the moment you want to buy a property, so for example, you want to buy an apartment of $100,000, of course, you have to save up to $30,000. That's all roughly, okay? This is what you need to do. So saving up to this amount to be able to buy your property, I'll tell you this is the hardest part in this whole journey. Why? Step one is always the hardest step ever, because saving up money isn't that hard. But the moment you gotta cut in your expenses, like, you know, we're not gonna go on holiday this year. We're gonna stay at home. We're gonna go out day trips, but we're not gonna spend a lot of money going on an exotic trip. That's the first expense that you gotta cut. You gotta cut so many expenses that it'll look very scary the moment you have $30,000 on your bank account, that you're still living very minimalistic. Because, hey, you want to retire early. So this is why you got to delay all your gratifications as much as possible, because the longer you can delay your gratifications, the earlier you can retire. And then, of course, enjoy your life afterwards. Now, we're not talking about dying early, because, you know, then you'll have your life. They always say, you know, I'll have all the money in my life if I die by 4 o'clock. But okay, so saving up until this 30% down payment, that's the hardest part. That is the hardest part for everybody to do if you haven't done this trick before. Step number two in this whole journey of how to retire early is, of course, as you can see over here, finding the right property. As you are somebody who is a beginner in this whole journey, finding the right property is very hard. Now, my advice would always be start off easy. Start off easy, yet cheap, but reliable. So easy, cheap, and reliable, because in the end, you don't want to build a new house, because, you know, if you could, you would, but you can't, and that's why you don't. Okay, so I always advise you to look for an apartment somewhere between 100 and 150,000. Now, I'm sure there are places that have this apartment. Now, I'm not talking about location in this case, because that's a different video. If you want to know more about how to find the best property, click on the pop-up button over there, and then you'll know how I find my places and more real estate. Now, in this case, we'll just go into this very quickly. Finding a property somewhere between 100 and 150,000. And what you would like to do, of course, like I said, the property needs to be easy, cheap, yet reliable, because you want to make money off this property, okay? Step number three in this case is, of course, fixing up the property. Now, what you would like to do is you would like to do some cosmetic things. Now, you bought a property. Like I said, it's cheap, it's easy, and yet reliable. So the property in itself works. But would you like, most likely you'll take a look at the property, and most properties are outdated. It's like a bit in the 70s style. Now, it's very easy, like that's already like 50 years old. What you would like to do, of course, is you would like to give it like an update. The moment people walk into the property, they have the feeling like, wow, this looks fancy. This, you know, although I only rented a place here, it looks fancy and nice. That's what you want to do. You don't want to change full floor plans. You don't want to remove all the piping. What you would like to do is you would like to, you know, lay a new floor or make a new wall or put in a new kitchen. You want to put in things that contractors can easily just fix up within 1 or 2 weeks. Not too hard, because if you take too much time, that'll all eat in your expenses, of course. That's not what you want to have. The moment you fix up the property, what you want to do is you want to add value to the property. That's what you want to have. The moment you buy a property of like 100K, you want to fix it up and patch it up. You want to have it valued more. That's what you want to have, because the moment the property is valued higher, you can rent it out for a higher price as well. And that's what you want as well. In this example that I'm going to use, I'm going to show you a property over here, which I bought, you know, recently. And the property is 120,000. What happens, of course, it's very simple. The home actually looked a bit outdated. So what we did is we fixed up the walls. We always create a feature wall, which looks very fancy. It's very cheap to create, just a few $100 to paint the walls, and all of a sudden you've got fancy rooms. I always say the repairs are about $10,000. That's the best way to calculate it. Now, as you can see, $120,000 is the purchase price. 30% of down payment is, in this case, the purchase price is of course $120,000. 30% of down payment is $36,000, and of course the cost for repairs are about $10,000. So making this total expenses of $46,000 for a property. So that means for this property I spend $46,000. As for this property, I just wrote the numbers down over here. Adding up that together, making the property I spent $46,000 to be able to buy this property. Okay, so that's the down payment plus the repairs. Now let's go into step number 4. Step number 4 is, of course, renting the place out. You gotta find tenants who want to live in this home. Now, the moment you rent this place out, it rents somewhere around $800 per month. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that's not bad. And it is not bad. So there are quite some expenses to this. We've got a mortgage of $350 per month. We've got an insurance, which is about $50 a month. We've got the risk management. Of course, if something breaks down, you got to fix it up. So we've got a risk management of about $150 per month, leaving you with a net income of about $250 per month from this apartment. Now you might be thinking, wow, that's not a bad idea. I put down $46,000 and yet I get $250 each month. So yes, this is what you need to save up for. So saving up $46,000 generates you $250 per month. That is the first calculation. But we have to go to the next step. That'll show you how this is going to work out, okay? Then, of course, comes step number 5. Step number 5 is one of the most important things. It's called refinancing. Refinancing is a very important step in this because you actually repaired the place. You actually added value to the place. The moment you want to refinance the place, you actually have it appraised for a new price. And all of a sudden, what you will see, and in my case this happened, I reappraised the property for $150,000. And with the $150,000, you can get a new bank loan from the bank using saying like, you know what, Mr. Bank, was worth $120,000. That's what you gave me the loan for. But now the property is valued at $150,000. Now 30% of $150,000, my own down payment value is $45,000. But the bank loan, I get a new loan from $105,000. I gave the $84,000 back. Difference here is what I get from the bank. All of a sudden, I get $21,000 in cash from the bank saying like, well, the property is valued higher, so you get $21,000 now, which is the difference in between this. This is the actual amount that I spend on this property. I get $21,000 back because I refinanced the property. All of a sudden, my initial payment of this whole property is only $25,000. With a down payment of $25,000, I get a net income of $250 per month. The moment you're refinancing the property, all of a sudden, you get money back from the bank. Of course, refinancing the whole property also means that the mortgage will go up slightly as well, making a $250 net income somewhere around $200, because you lose about $50 per month as well because your mortgage rose as well. So having only down put $25,000, all of a sudden you get an income of $200 per month, which is not a bad idea. But this is not where it ends, because step number 6 is the final step in this whole case, which is rinsing and repeat. Rinse and repeat. Saving up about $40,000 will generate you about $200 to $250 per month. If you can do that every time again, so the moment you've done it once, you can do it a second time. So keep your full-time job, keep track of all your expenses, save as much as you can, and the moment you've saved up all your money, what you do is you go into this whole process again. The moment you have your $46,000, you can buy your property again, and then you have your second property. But because this time you have an income from your property as well, don't spend the rental income, of course, but use this to quickly save up for the second batch. At the moment your second batch goes as well, your third property goes as well. It goes faster and faster every time. I'll tell you this, in my own example, it cost me about two and a half years to be able to buy the first property. But all of a sudden, the second property, because it took me so much work to save up all the money, the second property was within 2 years, I bought my second property. And the third property was already within 1 year. And this is how this goes. This process takes a while, but you'll get something as well. I always say if you do this for a whole decade, if you can delay your gratification for a whole decade, you can reap all the benefits afterwards, because then you have all the freedom after a decade. Keep on growing automatically, and every time you can just save up to 40, 50,000. But I'll tell you this, you start off, like I said, cheap, easy and reliable, but the moment you get more money, you can actually buy the more expensive places. You can buy more fancy properties, and all of a sudden you can maybe buy a whole complex together, like an apartment complex. And then all of a sudden you can grow faster and faster until you want to stop, and then you don't buy anymore. But that's the whole case of this whole journey. Track your expenses, save up the amount to a down payment, find a property, fix up the property, add value to the property, rent the place out, refinance the place, and of course, rinse and repeat. And this is just how the process goes, as easy as that. And this is how you can grow from 1 property to 10 properties to 20 properties. This is how you can make money on the long run. And then of course, retire early. Thank you very much for watching today's video. If you liked the video, of course, be sure to hit that subscribe button, because that's the way how we grow our community. And of course, if you want to be notified every time a new video comes out, be sure to hit that notification bell as well. Thank you very much for watching today's video, and I'll see you on the next. Bye-bye.